TESOL Presents Free Friday webinars. I am your host, Shelly Sanchez Terrell, and we are here every Friday thanks to AmericanTESOL.com. You can bring friends. We have been here for years. I think now ours is our seventh year of making video webinars and having them recorded. So you can watch them, and you can find this on our YouTube channel if you go to youtube.com and it's user a TESOL. Okay, so I went ahead and shared that in the chat box. And of course, you can always get a certification for teaching English language learners. You can also get one for teaching business English. You can also get one for teaching with technology, and then also one for teaching young learners. And all of these you can do face-to-face or in classes all around the world. Just go to AmericanTESOL.com to find some more information. So today we're going to talk about a really great part of the curriculum, which is project-based learning. And many of you have probably already had a project-based had a project in your curriculum, and maybe you're planning for a big project. I try to actually get quite a few projects done. I'm very hands-on and task-oriented, but I definitely for each class try to have at least one project per semester, just to get students to conduct hands-on learning, real-world learning. And so I'm going to go ahead and walk you through some of those steps, okay? Now, in case some people are having problems with the video, I'm going to stop the webcam, and then we're going to just see my face for a second in a picture, and that might make things a little bit easier for those with a slower connection, okay? So, one of the reasons why it's really great for students to be able to have project-based learning is not only because it's a more enriching way to learn, especially from when we have textbooks, we have handouts, worksheets, quizzes, tests. Even if they get to use technology to do things, it's really great about being able to, it's really great for students to be able to investigate a question, especially a complex one, for a very long time. So I'm currently writing my newest book. I'm finishing up with those chapters. And that's one of the things I've been talking about, how in school and in the curriculum, we need to give students more of a chance to be able to investigate questions, because problems especially are very complex. And there is usually no one answer for a problem. Instead, there's a multitude of ways to approach a problem and make it to make it advances on it, to understand it. And even if a student doesn't find an answer, they need to understand the importance that it has to be able to learn a lot and investigate, and how when they share that knowledge, someone else can build on it. So a great example, for example, is Einstein. There was a lot of theories that Einstein developed. He didn't only find answers to things. Actually, he found a lot of just research and clarified our understanding and helped us better understand space and in different types of physics. So now there are all these scientists all around the world, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who have been able to take what Einstein gave us more an understanding about, and now they're able to find. Now we might even have quantum computers and all these really fascinating things. But it wasn't because Einstein found answers. It was because Einstein investigated and gave and paved the road for more knowledge of a situation. So if our students can do something like that, then that's really, really exciting. Now, where I get a lot of my basis, because there's a lot of theories out there about your approach to project-based learning. And one of the best places is the Buck Institute. So if you go to BIE.org, you're going to find a lot of free, great resources, including free ebooks on how to conduct project-based learning. You can learn more about the pedagogy, about their instructional approach, and all those materials are free. They even have assessments. So BIE.org is a really great resource, especially for this particular webinar, because that's where I've grounded my research, okay? And they define project-based learning as students gaining knowledge and skills by working for an extended period of time. That could be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, a whole semester, however much you want them to investigate and respond to an authentic, engaging, and complex question, problem, or challenge. Okay. And as Peggy George says, they also offer a lot of free webinars from the Buck Institute. Now, Buck Institute differentiates from having PBL, as that definition is, which can be pretty broad. And then they have what's called the gold standard, which is, what we aim for, how we really want our PBL to look. And for the gold standard, these are the essential elements of that gold standard that you can see here. Let me go ahead and blow that up a little bit so you can see that. But you would have the product, the public product. So you actually have to publish what the students investigated, what answer, what clarification they came up with, better understanding and conclusions did they reach. The challenging problem or question, which, most of us have for PBL, they usually like for students to be able to develop that. So you can give a topic, like let's say, for example, you're studying language, and then you want your students to investigate how people use verbs these days, or how people use, for example, one of the things that recently came out was the way we use apostrophes and commas. And the reason that came out was because the New York Times added an extra comma under their heading about Donald Trump Jr. So it's reached this high this high magnitude. People are debating why they have an extra comma under Donald Trump Jr. It's actually very interesting if you want to look at it. But what your students could do, let's say that was your question, that's your challenging question. What is, the use for commas? Well, students, they could do sustained inquiry. Let's say that for 2 weeks, you have each of them look at different official sites that publish news. Let's say one takes the BBC, one takes the New York Times, one takes the New Yorker, and they all investigate for weeks how the reporters do commas, okay? And then they can come up with their own rules. They can say, based on these, great. So that's one way for language learners to be able to do investigation of a question or a challenge, something that's relevant today. Then they would have authenticity. Authenticity is something that they're really researching. It's not something fake, that it's actually tied to meaningful real world learning. When they come up, for example, with different criteria, okay, well, according to the New York Times, this is what I found for this is what I found for commas. And then Peggy George just shared a lot of great links on the BIE site for the gold standard. Then the students get a voice and choice. They get to actually choose, okay, this is what I'm investigating long term. And then they can make a poster presentation. They can present to their peers. They can make a digital document, an ebook. There's so many different types of products that they can have that they can publish online. They have a reflection, they critique, and they revise each other, okay? So I'm going to give you tools for all of those as well. Let me go back to regular screen. So one of the great places to find a lot of projects, and I think Antipi and Tiziana might have experience with this as well, and Christina, is etwinning.net. I think that I pronounced etwinning right this time. And what that is if you're in Europe, you're able to join this network, and you're able to also participate in global collaboration projects, but they actually outline projects for you. You participate with other schools, you complete things in the platform, so you don't have to come up with this yourself. In fact, it just kind of guides your class, and you have a lot of meaningful learning and reflection with this. So this is one of those places that you can join, especially when you're working with English language learners, because they get to participate in not only project-based learning for any type of subject. They have a lot of different projects they can do. They can investigate science, geography, math, but all of the skills that they learn from this, they also do in English, and they chat with another country in English. So that's really awesome as well. So the general process, the one that I go through when I'm in, I'm using PBL or problem-based learning, is there's that first step, which is the question and the problem initial investigation. So once students, depending on, if you're giving them the challenge, if they're coming up with their own challenge, then, you have that initial investigation. That's not in depth. That's something really quick. That can be something where you give them the background information, where you give them a few different types of projects that you want them to links that you want them to investigate. That's all up to you, the way you want to do it. Now, one of the ways that you can also do this is you can have students come up with their own questions. You can give them a topic, and they can come up with a driving question. Now, these driving questions, if you want to learn how to format them, Peggy George and I just shared this link by Andrew Miller on how to write driving questions, and that really does help you with the process of starting PBL. Yes, they aren't that easy to write. To write a really good question, and that's also really helpful for language learners, but it's helpful for all learners. It takes some time, it takes some thought, it takes some reflection, it takes some caring about. And a lot of times when students have PBL, we might give them a project. We might say, okay, we want you to make a poster about an animal. Well, they might not care about it. So we need to make sure that that question part, this problem initial investigation, when they're choosing that, when they're crafting that question, that they care and they reflect and they really find answers. Their project aims to really, every part of that project is aiming to find the answers to driving questions. And a lot of times the problem initial investigation or challenge or question is not just one question, it's several different types of question. Like, for example, for an animal, they might ask, okay, so what is the prey? General questions like, what does it eat? Is it nocturnal? Does it come out in the day? And then also, how does our understanding, some deeper questions, how does our understanding of this animal, answer specific answer specific, or help us in some way understand our ecosystem, our local ecosystem. So it could be, so that's a more that's a deeper question. How does, understanding this one little animal that's in their backyard help them to really understand, their local area, the geography, and how animals in their area work together, and, the whole process there. So that's very important. And then the rest of the steps get easier because those questions are that they've reflected on drive all of that. They're brainstorming, how are they going to investigate this? Their research, that's the deeper research period. That's where you lead them either to the library, you give them databases, you give them something like, for example, great websites for the animals might be Discovery, PBS, the National Geographic, the zoo, a local zoo site. They might look at webcams, animal webcams. That's one of the recent ones that I found out was really good, of animal webcams, and that was a really great project because students didn't even have to leave their area. They just observed animal webcams, and I found that on Read, Write, Think. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and share with you that wonderful project-based learning there, because I thought that was really interesting because there's so many there. So you can be really inventive about all of this research. And then finally, the product. What are you going to get them to present? Are they going to present a digital? With technology, they can present digital books. They can present posters, interactive presentations. They can create an app. They can create a game. They can create a video tutorial. There's so many options. And then what is the presentation and implementation? If it was a solution to a problem, let's say that they decided they were going to try and not only did they want to present that particular animal, but they found out that that animal, either the environment was is in danger, or the animal itself is in danger. And so let's say they want to go a step further and they want to protect this animal. So what can they do? That would be the implementation of the solution. And then the out evaluation and feedback, either from you and from their peers. So when you are working with technology, there are several types of products that you can come up with. They can come up with digital stories, infographics, or great product, instructional field guides. They could create a virtual tour, maybe of the environment, let you see what's happening in a podcast. They can code something. They can 3D print something. They can make an interactive map. They can make a digital book, a timeline, a mind map, a social media campaign. They can program something. They can invent something. They can make a sandbox game, something like Minecraft they can look at. So there's so many wonderful options. They can do a crowdfunding campaign. There's so many options out there. Your students can decide how they want to, with technology, if you want to really teach them those skills on how to solve problems with technology, you want to try something like that. All of this is groomed on pedagogy. There's a lot of instructional theories out there and approaches on integrating technology in the classroom. So digital blooms is one of the most popular ones. The SAMR model, pedagogy, ART, which is SAMR and ART kind of go hand in hand. They're a reflection off of each other. There's TPAC, connectivism. It's good to get familiar with all of these. You can find a lot of free resources online. If you go to shellyterrell.com/tech tips, then you can find links and also infographics on all of these. So that will help you be able to just kind of get a general understanding, so that way you know how to integrate technology effectively in the classroom. Well, okay, so now I'm going to introduce you some apps and tools that are really great for project-based learning. There's Google Apps and Tools. That's one of my favorites. I always mention Google, but that's because, especially during that time when you have a break, the more you learn about Google, you don't have to become a Google certified teacher or anything. I know that costs. I do a lot of this just on my own, and I learn it. You can take sometimes a lot of the certifications and also be able to learn more about it. But if you're able to learn more about Google, then it has a whole kind suite for your students. If your students are connected to Google, then they can create a Google Doc, which also means they can create an ebook. They can create a hyperdoc. There's so many things they can create with that. Google Sheets, they can make a spreadsheet. They can have Google Forms. They can do a survey. All of this ties to project-based learning. They can create an interactive slide presentation. They can create a website. So all of those they can do with a Google account. There's so much they can do. They can even get on video and do a Google Hangout. So there's tons of different types of project ideas if you run it through Google. Another place is, and I think I mentioned it later, but Microsoft OneNote. OneNote is a great Sway, and then also there's a lot of ways that you can use Microsoft as well to conduct problem-based learning products. So your problem research, let's look at some great tools for that. So one of the good tools for that is I have an observation log. So my students, you can even go to Pinterest and find these as well. But you can find that different types of observation logs. You can go to Pinterest, and there's tons of them. And you can model yours off of that, or you can go from my book. But on Pinterest, they have a lot as well for little kids, even 5, 6-year-olds, all the way to much, much older, of how they observe something for a long period of time. For this one, we have here, you have that area of the to give a question or challenge where they make the research statement, which is I will observe how, what, when, who. They come up with their question. They talk about the location where they're observing. They put 5 facts that they know about the research. Just 5 facts that they can come with that kind of, that they already know already. It might be something like, when we talk about plants, maybe they say, I know plants have leaves. It could be something simple like that because we want them to draw from what they already know, and that scaffolds, that ties the new learning together. Or they can do a quick Google search and then just kind of run into things really quick where they just come up with a basic knowledge. And then later on, they're going to find more answers, a visual or drawing. And then they have to list 3 to 5 questions that they're curious about. Now, for my new book, I've adapted this a lot. Instead of I'm curious, it says I wonder, and then they come up, and then also they do time, location. It looks more like what scientists actually do. So this looks a lot better in my newest book, but this is a sample of what you can do. This would be included in a field journal, and a field journal can last several days. But real researchers, and not only for science, but for any type of research you do in any topic, and you can think of it, if some of you have done your doctorate or even your master's for education, for English, anywhere you have to do research, any topic, when you start going into the universities. And the reason they want you to do research is to advance that field, whether it's English language learning, whether it's grammar, whether it's linguistics, whether it's literature, whether it's psychology, sociology, anthropology, whatever it is. You're going to have to do research when you advanced in education, and so are your students. When your students are in a university level, they're going to have to do some kind of research. And so it helps them out because they're going and doing this field research where they're really looking at real things around the world. And yes, like Peggy pointed out, all teachers should do action research in their classroom. And, when you start doing your master's and you also start doing your EDD, your higher level, your work, then you are required to do that kind of research. I know I had to do an action research project as part of my master's. So those are something that will help you as well. So Evernote is one of those great ways to be able to conduct that ongoing field research. I love Evernote. It's on all devices, iOS, Android, the web. It's on it. It's free. It has a free version. You can draw. You can take pictures. You can take video clips. You can annotate. You can highlight. You can take notes. You can take audio notes. It categorizes. It's just a really wonderful tool for research and taking notes. Diigo is another one. It's a free tool. It's available on all devices, including your mobile device. These also work offline. So once you download the app, your students are able to use this, even if they don't have an internet connection. And for a lot of us, that's really helpful. So with Diigo, you can annotate. Annotate means where you highlight or mark up, where you can draw arrows. You can, you can circle things. You can type little notes, little captions that tell you what it means. Okay, at this time I saw it is 3 o'clock and my animal is feeding. I have noticed for the last 5 days that my insect, which is a spider, has been eating or feeding at 3 o'clock every day, or something like that. Whatever your students notice, they can do all that. And they can do that with Snapchat too, actually. So if your students use Snapchat a lot, then they can even use Snapchat to annotate and to do field observations and research, and they would find that actually really fun. Explain Everything is another app that's really great. It's iOS, it's for Chrome, it's for Android, Windows, for multiple devices. You can see here, students can add drawings, they can do labeling, they can write little captions. Here they're writing down all of this on a mobile device. And so that's really great for learning. They can take pictures and add text and stuff. If you want to do it through video, get Puppet. Unfortunately, all of these are free apps, by the way. They do have a free version, so look up the free version. They also have paid versions, but of course you can always look up just the free one, which usually if you put, if it doesn't come up, if it comes with a paid one, because that's what happens sometimes, then just look up Lite. If you put Lite after the app, then that's usually the free version. Some countries will not have a free version. Sorry about that. I know that in some countries they just don't do that. I don't know why, but that's what happens. Or it's not available for that country. And if that happens to be the case, let me know so I can try to find some alternatives. But Get Puppet's a really great one for annotating videos. So you can highlight, you can add squares, you can add hearts, you can add text, you can add arrows, circle things on a video. So that's very interesting for students right now. Microsoft OneNote, as I was mentioning earlier, is another multiple device tool to be able to conduct projects. A lot of students like to take notes and do research that way, and they can take collaborative notes, just like you can with a Google Doc. And it keeps it sort of like a folder, but it's a digital folder where everyone gets together and kind of, if they're working in small groups and partners, let's say they're working with another class, then it's a great way to collaborate. And then I was mentioning early Snapchat, and I had mentioned this also with the novels as well. But Snapchat, there's something called book snaps, and so you can see here how they've used Snapchat. This is from Tara Martin, and Tara Martin's a teacher, and so she does this on her own with her own books that she reads. She'll show you the steps on annotation, but it's very good when students are able to, instead of marking up the real books, because they may want to read them later, enjoy them, or collect them, one of the things they can do is they take a picture of it and then they just draw on it, and then they can write captions and text, or they can add audio notes and things like that, and then they can talk about their research. They can really get into it, so that's really great. Some of the really great apps for project-based learning, EduBunsy. You can create lots of things. I'm a big fan of EduBunsy. You can add text, you can add stickers, you can copy other people's templates. They're project-based learning. If your students you can assign them in you can do digital stories, digital books, digital presentations, digital posters. You can do all kinds of things. You can add a video or record your own video with your own webcam. So that's really interesting because you can make this, for example, a way for them you can assign the project through Bunsy, and then they can turn it into you through Bunsy. Voki is another one. It's especially great for English language learners because it's the web, iOS, and Android. But with Voki, and they have a free version that doesn't do so much, but the paid version does really well. Unfortunately, their free version isn't. You can't do as much anymore with the free version. Well, you can, but you can't share it as much, so you'll have problems. For example, embedding and things like that. They kind of force you to get the if you want to do more, but they do have this new presentation mode. So not only do you make this avatar that actually speaks whatever the students write, but it has a presentation mode where it has a background that can be your slides. So students can actually make an interactive presentation narrated by their own avatar that they create. And that avatar doesn't have to be like a man or a prince. It can be an animal. It could be a famous person. I mean, they have so many options. Students can use different accents. They can type in the text, the dialogue. So they do have a lot of different ways. It's really great tool for language learners. But as I said, yeah, it does get more expensive, and they do make it to where you have to purchase more to be able to really. Yeah, I mean, it's just such a great tool that eventually you're just like, wow, I would like to actually have the paid version. TinyTap is really great as well. It's for iOS and Android. It's an app. You can create games, quizzes, and presentations very easily. Even, when we think about creating games, how difficult that is. But with TinyTap, even very little learners, 3, 4, and 5, will find it fairly easy to create a game on TinyTap. It walks them through. It's more like a quiz, a simple quiz game, but it's still really a great way for students to be able to show animated presentation. They can add their own voice. They can add their own images. They can take pictures of things around them, which I think is always great because that's real world learning. And then they can create interactive presentations, games, and quizzes with those. Live binders. I love live binders. It's not as easy and animated as the other ones, but it's like a digital notebook. It has a lot of free, the free version offers you so much. So live binders is just awesome, and it always gives you more and more. And it's sort of like having a web page, except you get several different tabs. You can present with it. You can add pictures, include YouTube videos. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do, and it's a bookmarking tool as well. And as Peggy was saying here, it's her favorite curation tool as well. And I think Christina was saying there's some other curation tools she likes, and she's doing a research project to see how people have loved it. You know, what are their favorite curation tools? Padlet's a great one. So Padlet's great for project-based learning because students can create a Padlet on the web, or they can do it through the iOS app. But it's a mind map, and we're used to mind maps. So if it's not that difficult for teachers who are just barely trying to find a way to integrate technology with something they're familiar with. So all of us are familiar with mind mapping. You know, and students are too. Chances are they've done a mind map with the teacher, and if not, mind mapping, we can find a lot of pedagogy, instructional practices, and lesson plans. So with Padlet, it just makes it digital. They can add pictures, they can add videos, they can add links, they can even work on a mind map together with other students. So that's really great. And then there's the book creator app, so they can make a digital book. That could be the product that they use to showcase their project. Canva is another tool. It's for on the web for free, and then also the iPad app. They can create digital posters, infographics, fairly easy. They have so many templates, and then all students have to do is they provide their own information using the template. So I showed you tons of tools, gave you tons of ideas for project-based learning, even the research part, but how do we assess this? And that's always important. I tend to assess with the rubric, but now teachers are trying to find different ways to get deeper, you know, how to make an even better rubric. So I actually tweeted something today on how to have, for example, that way you can have, that way you're able with your rubrics to make them better and to add rigor and grit is what they call them, rigor. But it's just fancy terms to make a better rubric. So I'm going to go ahead and give you some a link for that I found today on how to design a really good rubric for assessment. In fact, I'm going to put that in the link right now. But you can go to newtechnetwork.com, .org, and then one of the things they do is they have assessment and PBL. They give you different types of project launch, the early phase. So each phase you can assess that with students. They give you ideas on the site as well. But this one by the Digital Shift Wiki, spaces.com, also helps you develop like a lot of great ones. So I'm writing my book, and that'll be published soon. It's hacking project. It's part of the Hack Learning series. But one of the ones on the Hack Learning series is by Ross Coops. And rosscoops31.com, you can see a lot of his information. He talks a lot about PBL, has free resources on his blog. But he did write also a book as well with Erin Murphy, and they have a lot on 10 easy steps to project-based learning. So that might be something you want to check out. He does have free materials as well on rosscoops31.com. So you can kind of look at all the great stuff and how he talks about project-based learning. And Ross Coop actually has so many ideas on how to do really great assessment what real assessment is, and also he talks a lot about project-based learning. He has so many great ideas with his students, so I find them very useful. And that's it. So thank you so much for coming today. I'm going to get back because I have a keynote here in Memphis and I got to prepare for that and some other workshops and stuff. And the baby is here, but thank you so much for joining me, and be sure to join us next week. I'm not really sure what we're doing